another edition of Pro Wrestling Unleashed. Thanks for joining me, folks, for this edition of the Raw recap. Giving you the results from tonight's Raw edition for July the 17th, 2017. I think it's a good show overall, folks. This results of what happened, and I'll get right on into them. We have Dean Ambrose opening up the show. Basically, he's talking about The Miz and all the problems The Miz has been causing him. And he's wanting The Miz and encouraging The Miz to come out. The Miz instead doesn't show. But Seth Rollins, however, does show. Now, remember, Seth betrayed the Shield years ago and they broke up on account of that. Dean is very worried of Seth Rollins. He told Seth, make no bones about it. The only reason why you got the rescue was because you were in the same vicinity that my target was, which was The Miz. And Seth goes back and reflects back on their time, and he offers an apology to Dean, and Dean says, I just don't trust you. So Seth told Dean, take this chair. I'll turn around, hit me in the back if you feel like it, if this will get it out of your system, because I put it in the past behind me. I'm trying to move forward. So Dean thinks about it a while, but he ends up throwing a chair to the outside. This prompts The Miz to come out, and The Miz to Raj. All three surround the ring, and basically Dean and Seth get attacked by The Miz and The Miz to Raj with chairs. Dean is laid out outside with a chair. Seth gets it in the ring. He ends up getting a skull-crushing finale onto a chair. After the match, it prompts Kurt Angle to make a 2-on-3 handicap match next week with Seth and Dean Ambrose taking on The Miz and The Miz to Raj. So this is one of the matchups for next week. Up next, we have Bayley taking on Alexa Bliss. Now, remember, Bayley got the pin on Alexa Bliss last week during their tag team matchup. So this match, before it can even get started, really started, Nia Jax comes out there. So you know Nia Jax is a monster of a woman that she is. She's outside in Alexa Bliss's corner throughout this matchup, which proves that she comes and at one point to where Bayley throws Alexa out. Bayley goes to get Alexa, but Nia Jax blocks the way, won't allow her to go around her, which prompts Alexa to get a cheap shot in on Bayley. So then as they're fighting in the ring, Sasha Banks comes out, and she takes out Nia Jax, so Nia won't be effective and interfere in the matchup. Bayley ends up hitting Alexa Bliss with the Bayley to belly suplex. She gets the she gets the pin. This is 2 weeks in a row now that we've seen Bayley take on and defeat and pin Alexa Bliss. This also too shows of Sasha and Sasha's feeling how she feels about Alexa Bliss and getting a shot at this at her Raw Women's title. So this comes up later on in the show. Up next, we have a cruiserweight tag team bout. We have the gentleman Jack Gallagher and Mustafa Ali taking on the Brian Kendrick and Drew Gulak. Basically, Gallagher and Mustafa dominated much of this matchup with some good tags back and forth, and Kendrick and Gulak got a little bit of offense and not too much. We saw the ending show where the gentleman Jack Gallagher hit the Brian Kendrick with that patented headbutt, which allowed Mustafa to get on the ropes and hit a inverted 450 splash onto Kendrick to get the win. So we see Gallagher and Mustafa pick up the wins for them in the cruiserweight division. Which brings us next to Enzo Amore, who comes out and he talks to Big Cass, and he's still upset because of their friendship being broken, and he talks to Big Cass, and he says things like, I've allowed you to pick me up, and you would throw me into opponents. I did that because I wanted to win. You threw me over the ropes last week, like you said you were throwing me out of your life. You can throw me down, but I'll get right back up. This prompts Big Cass to come out, and he tells Enzo tells him, well, if you want to fight, we're going to have a fight. Enzo gets out of the ring as Cass gets in the ring. We basically see Enzo go into the WWE Universe and get a chair And all of a sudden, he says, I'm going to watch a fight. All of a sudden, the Big Show, which we saw last week, Big Show stood up toe-to-toe with Cass. Big Show basically dominated much of the early on matchup, which really wasn't a match. It was a fight because there was no ref or no bell or anything. He gets on the top of the apron, and Cass catches the Big Show and shoves his back into the post, which affects his ribs. Now, this comes into play because this is the turning point in the fight where Big Cass takes advantage of the Big Show. Now, Show tries to put up a fight. Cass ends up getting the better of him. Enzo comes in. Enzo eats a big boot from Cass. Cass looks over, sees both of them down. And Cass blames Corey Grace for the whole match, for the whole issue of what's going on between them, early in the beginning of the match, because he's the one that revealed that it was Big Cass that did attack Enzo. So we basically see that happen, and Big Cass walks out and leaves. We come back, of course, Elias Sampson is taking on Finn Balor. Now, Finn Balor, they started off pretty equal in the beginning of the matchup. Then we see near the end of the matchup that Finn starts getting the upper hand. He ends up doing a baseball slide, getting Elias Sampson on the outside. He goes underneath the ropes. He goes to the outside. Elias picks his guitar up and does a double J and hits him with the guitar, which prompts himself to be disqualified, which allows Finn to get the DQ win. But to me, it isn't over with, because then we see Bray Wyatt come on the Titantron and say, I've seen the hurt you're going through. I know you're going through a lot, and I'm going to unleash all the soul, tormented souls, and the devil himself onto you. So we see this feud even further extenuating longer with Bray and with Finn Balor. So look for this to be hopefully a good feud. I know it can be if they allow it to. Up next, we have the rematch. Tozawa taking on Daivari. Daivari earlier, when Titus was talking to his men, he was just telling them how disgusted he was of Tozawa and him begging for rematches and Apollo, and all this stuff. And Tozawa says, I will fight you. So this matchup, Daivari looks to have injured Tozawa early on in the matchup, his shoulder. And through the whole matchup, really, Tozawa couldn't go full strength because his shoulder, no matter what he tried to do, Daivari worked on his shoulder enough, and it worked so much at one point that it prompted Titus to get on the apron to get the referee's attention and tell the referee, look, call this matchup, which just totally caught Tozawa off guard. Tozawa gets upset and tells Titus as he's leaving that he's upset with him, and you understand why. And Titus tries to tell him in the back, look, I only did this to try to save you from getting hurt further. And Tozawa, he tells him that he's sorry, and he asked him what he could do to make it up to him. Tozawa tells him, look, I want a rematch with Daivari on 205 Live. So we see that's going to happen apparently on 205 Live between Tozawa and we see Daivari. So decent matchup, or at least what happened to it. We see Kurt Angle come out. Everybody's been wondering all week what Kurt Angle's big announcement was. Could it be something with Stephanie? Could it be something with Dixie? There was a lot. The internet was running rampant about what possibly could happen, what the announcement could be. Personally, I thought it was something with Dixie Carter since she was in the 24 special from Kurt Angle after Raw last week, but it wasn't. Come to find out, Kurt claimed he had this girlfriend he was with, and she ended up pregnant, and he didn't know, and he had it adopted, and he become a wrestler, and basically it was boiling down. We knew it was American Alpha one way or the other because he said it was a wrestler in WWE. I was thinking it might have been Gable if it had been, but no, it was actually Jason Jordan. So Jason Jordan, and also Jason Jordan is the newest member of Raw, which essentially is a bad news for American Alpha fans on the SmackDown division, tag team division, because now they've literally broken up. So Jason Jordan, which is Angle's son, on Raw, which leaves Gable over on SmackDown by himself. So that was the big announcement that we had all been hearing. So there was kind of a swerve in what we were kind of hearing and what was going to be the actual announcement. So We see the Revival come back last week and take out the Hardys after the Hardys had already gotten beaten down by Gallows and Anderson. This week, this was actually a good tag team matchup. You seen Dash and Dawson work old school, and you made mention of the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, Ole and Arn, Tully and Arn Anderson. You know, there was a lot of going on with this matchup, and the Hardys, of course, being typical Hardy fashion, their tag team working together. It was a really good matchup. I thought it was a really good one, but the ending saw where basically Dash had gotten Dawson had gotten the poetry of motion put on him. Jeff's going up to the top to hit the swanton. Dash pushes Jeff and knocks him loose off the ring. Jeff falls down hard into the ropes. Then we see Dawson take and roll him up and grab the tights while he's getting the pin, and here we go. The Hardys are yet again lost, and we've seen the Revival pick up a win on their first full match since they've been back together after the surgery that went through. So, interesting feud that we're going to have between those guys going forward, and good to see the Revival back. Main event of the night, folks, this was a physical match between these two. Samoa Joe taking on Roman Reigns. The winner goes on to face the number one contender and face Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. Kind of figured Braun's going to get interjected in this thing. Sure enough, he did, folks. After a long, just physical matchup, Roman was down. Samoa Joe was down. They kicked out of their finishers. They had, just a physical match. Braun comes in, devastates both of them. Power bombs Joe. Joe's down. He comes in and power bombs, and that power slam that he does wasn't a power bomb. It was a power slam. Let me correct that. And he takes and power slams Roman Reigns not once, but twice, showing his dominance as he stands tall. Now, they tried to put up a fight, but they were already too tired from their physical matchup. Then there were no chance for Braun. Braun just devastated and dominated both of them. So Braun basically leaves both of them laid out, stares at him, he leaves the ring, and that's how the show ends. So it sets up pretty much probably it might be a fatal four-way looking into it. This, which I would love to look forward to that. So that's basically how Raw ended. I enjoyed it. I hope you folks enjoyed my review of it as I try to give you out reviews of each of the wrestling, whether it's WWE RAW, SmackDown, GFW Impact. I try to get it to you folks. I hope you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel. If you do, drop a like on this video. If you have any comments, put them in the comments. My social media is in the description here. And until my next video, hopefully do a SmackDown video. This is Bill Mack with Pro Wrestling Unleashed saying, take it easy.